Frontier Theater, a theater from a positive future. One dedicated to gifting timely, transformative information via wizened guests and luminaries for the purpose of freeing our culture and planet from a negative, disastrous timeline. Join us as we explore the solutions. Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Davis, and welcome to Frontier Theater. It's above and beyond my pleasure today to welcome Brendan D. Murphy to Frontier Theater. We're at, I think, the absolute critical moment for pivoting and posturing into a necessary new culture. And in my purview of individuals around the planet that have basically looked at the histories of how we got here with the in-depth analysis of all the idiosyncrasies supporting the time we're in, Brendan is one of a very small handful that has done the work and certainly come up with some perspectives that I think are necessary, vital, and essential. So Brendan is the author of critically acclaimed the book, The Grand Delusion, a synthesis of science and spirituality, book 1. You could go to brandandmurphy.com and review that or pick the book up, and co-founder of free speech social network Truth, Trooth. He's also the host of Truthiverse podcast and radio show, truthiverse.com. All of these will be on our website, and is currently immersed in completing the monumental and groundbreaking book 2 of The Grand Delusion. As a transformational catalyst, Brendan utilizes a powerful sound-based form of DNA activation and healing to help clients take their lives and health to new heights. If you're interested in learning more about accelerated spiritual evolution, transformation, healing, and self-actualization, check out his free masterclass, How to Evolve Yourself Without Meditation, Hard Work, or Spending Thousands, at evolveyourself.live. Welcome, Brendan D. Murphy, freedom hacker, author, and truth addict, to the show.
Thank you, Robert. It's great to have a chat with you and connect.
So again, as we kind of previously discussed, there's a lot of directions we could go, because you're like, for me, walking in a candy store for information. You've brilliantly amassed so much and so many critical points of a continuum of download that is really representative of the new paradigm unfolding. And so what I would like to ask you in a generalized question, if you were to get up tomorrow, open up your door, walk outside, and everything that you have envisioned has transpired. Everything that you have envisioned transpired. What would that day or those moments as you walk into the day look like and feel like? What would you see around you as far as the people around you, the commerce? How are people living their lives with that vision? And then kind of secondarily, there's a map perhaps to get there, and what tools would be needed for us to manifest that vision of what you see?
That's a huge question, and I could take it in a few different ways, I suppose, because there's a part of me that goes off into the distant future and sees what it's going to look like when we have relinquished our addiction to technological progress and simplified things and come back to the earth, come back to ourselves, and come back to community. And so, there's a part of me at heart where I'm quite simple. I would like to have a very simple kind of a life. And I think we've created unnecessary complexity and toxicity in the environment that we've engineered as the human race of the 20th and 21st centuries. So, if I wake up tomorrow and it's sort of like maybe, 2025 or 2030, and it's like kind of an ideal situation. It's like I've got my friends down the road. I've got a little community here. We've we've bought the street and maybe this whole suburb, and we've started turning it into, you know, community gardens, and
Sure.
we've got, you know, we're off grid, we're living the simple life, but not necessarily, you know, when people hear that, sometimes they think, oh, what do you want to get rid of, you know, like electricity and computers and things, and it's no, not necessarily. We can still have the best of both worlds. It's just,
Yes.
I would like to return to something very simple and a lot cleaner.
Yes.
And a more humble way of living. And I think we have the capacity to have the best of technology without using it to destroy ourselves, and still be connected to the earth. And what I'm seeing is an attempt on the collective level to reconnect with the earth and nature, and kind of revivify the ancient knowledge and the indigenous wisdom that, you know, was essentially almost wiped out by the spread of the white sort of civilization. And here we are trying to recover it now because we realize we're destroying ourselves. And so, you know, it doesn't have to be necessarily that complicated or difficult. It's kind of already been done in a way,
Sure.
except now we're recapitulating, and we have a level of capacity and technology that wasn't there, you know, 500 years ago or 1,000 or 10,000 years ago. But we can access that wisdom from the past and bring it into the future to use it to guide our path forward, and realize that, you know, anything that disconnects us from the earth and from each other, and from our own bodies is a toxic thing, and something that needs to be addressed. So yeah, I mean, I think I live quite a simple life as much as possible. I mean, if I was left to my own devices and we weren't constantly being, if you like, assaulted by the powers that be, you know, I would be spending a lot of time writing and just researching and thinking and developing conceptual understandings and narratives and new high level sort of thought and analysis of, you know, who we are, what we are, where we're going, and where we've been, and devoting my brain power to that, that's the world I'd like to live in. Right now we're sort of transitioning into that, I think, very slowly and painfully, and I don't know how long it's going to take for us to get there. You know, it's sort of like, if you've ever read Brian Weiss's books, you know, he takes people into, and you probably have, given that you know, you've got the hypnotherapy background.
Yeah.
And you would know that he takes people into future progressions, so he does the past life stuff, but he also has progressed groups of people into possible futures. And he has seen, typically what happens is the group comes up with a sort of consensus, and it's been pretty consistent across the board. And
Sure.
in the distant future, say maybe over 1,000 years from now, what people see when they envisage life on Earth for humans is essentially like a return to the garden, like a kind of Edenic scenario where we've moved past all of this drama and the, you know, the strife and the self termination, you know, that we've got this complex of self-terminating at the moment that we're trying to move past. And we've gotten there in this distant future, and it's really beautiful, and it's calm and serene, and we're reconnected with the earth, we're reconnected with nature, and a lot of people have seen, you know, that we have bodies that we can elect to come into and go out of again, so without necessarily the body having to die.
Yes.
So that's one possibility, I think, is quite, for me, that's not outrageous at all. I think getting there will be quite interesting. And I know that he has also had groups come up with the possibility that we're going to be moving through another dark age in the sort of midterm to get to that distant possibility. So, I mean, who knows? Like I'm sort of doing my best to help raise the consciousness quotient so that we don't have to go through a dark age.
Yes. Well, it's almost as though we, you know, in the Vedic sense of the 24,000 year cycle, one that they use with the yugas, where you basically have, you know, the Kali Yuga, Dwapara, Treta, Satya Yuga. Maybe we're in the Dwapara coming out of the Satya, and it would be just about time to have a golden age, basically, in 1,000 years, if in fact that's the time frame. So the thing that I'm really wanting to provide information for, and a lot of my guests, I asked the question to the map to get there. Here we are in a, you know, a multi-tier dimensional reality that's really unfolding. Whether we're in a 5th dimensional here, maybe some people are in a 3-dimensional over here. We've got a strata of so many different souls, different memes. If Ken Wilber's models I've always enjoyed that when you go from a red meme to a turquoise meme and the consciousness levels. And you can almost go around and see that. I hate to see that, but it's true. It's there. So how do we equilibrate? How do we equilibrate this differentiation of souls that on our end, we would like to see some mobilization of enough souls to move into this more positive realm, a realm that's going to allow us to survive 9.8 billion people in 2050, feed them all, make sure there's economics, some degree of caregiving for so many people. You know, what's the pathway? And it's a huge thing to contemplate, but it's an important thing. I think if we can get a model, whether it's a new Buckminster Fuller World Games model that's articulated for all the variables we have now, or we set up an alternative UN, and bring people in, different institutes from all over the world, and really get on this, because, you know, it continues to unfold before our eyes. And these are the kind of initiatives that I really want to see somehow evolve to a manifestational level. We need articulation of vision to pull us forward. We can visualize good health. We can visualize this. When we ask somebody, well, what do we see for the future? How are we going to get there? It's like, you know, I want it good, but I don't know really how it's going to, you know, how is this going to happen? When I look around Santa Fe, New Mexico, and a lot of the impoverished people that are here, are we going to go to a Pueblo system here? You know, the articulation of the pathway is important to at least put on the table. I love not deciding anything, but making sure we have in front of us the necessary need of a Buckminster Fuller alternative new games model, or a UN being established where we bring in all the facets from, you know, psychology all the way down via spirituality, down to manifesting physical, vegetable, mineral, plant, and animal kingdom. So, I mean, the whole thing needs to be looked at in the context of an omniverse. We can no longer play universe games. We're even multiverse games. We need omniverse realities to really be put before us, so our playing field expands, so that we can basically, oh, let's look at, you know, 780,000 years ago, in which we had a gene splice. There was no Garden of Eden. There's extraterrestrial intervention. Absolutely. It's the Pleiades or the Anunnaki, you know, whatever we want to choose, but all these things are there. And so this is the new model that's going to allow people, I believe, that are not necessarily ready for a turquoise state of consciousness to kind of get information. And I think they'll start to feel it. I think it's going to be an in upward welling of information that basically they transform via perhaps your DNA modeling systems. And that's part of the process. That was my little soapbox there in the middle.
You know, it's really tempting to go off into, and it's necessary as well at some level, like to go thinking about all the different things that we need to pull together, and what it looks like, you know, to create alternatives to systems of governance, and, you know, we need a different kind of a UN and all this kind of stuff.
Sure.
But what we can't manifest those things in a benevolent or nourishing form if we continue operating through the trauma complexes that we've currently got going on a mass
Sure.
scale. So the most important thing that I see for people to really get their heads around is that we have to work through personal issues. We have to do shadow work as individuals and take ownership of who and what we are as mind, body, spirit complexes, and all the complexity that we bring to the table. I mean, being a human and doing it anything beyond the surface level is a full-time job. Like to try to, I always want to push towards like what's optimal, what's possible for me as a human. So it's working through that trauma, that cellular trauma, working through the ancestral trauma, letting go of belief systems that are limiting. I mean, reprogramming the mind in an intentional, conscious way to open up possibility, because we have to realize that we've been programmed artificially to have a artificially contracted sense of possibility and a completely false sense of who and what we are.
Exactly.
You know, you're talking about the omniverse, which is, I mean, we are the omniverse. We are omni beings. And so
Yes.
the basic realization of that is key as well. So it's sort of like we have to bring people into spiritual education 101 and help them understand you are not a body. You are actually a field of infinite consciousness with no beginning, no end, which has coalesced into all of these things. And, you know, you've just focalized it in this particular body right here and now for whatever particular purpose for this journey. But
Sure.
on a collective scale, we're not really ready to to enact real sort of powerful high level solutions on a mass scale, because we haven't done that internal work yet. We're still projecting outwards. Collectively, we're projecting our unresolved issues and our shadow content, and you know, most people are in that boat right now, and they're the ones who are essentially holding the vibrational matrix together that is not serving us. So if we take ownership as individuals, which is the only, you know, that's the only viable path right now. Like, we are in the age of the individual. And it's crucial that we act like responsible individuals and responsive individuals, and take ownership from the inside out and create reality from the inside out. And then we get to know organically, oh, I'm a spirit with a body, or I live in this omniverse. And we don't need this externally referenced kind of perception of, you know, what do the authorities tell me about reality? What do the authorities tell me about who and what I am? Because that's all garbage, you know, that's all just part of the control system. So there's a billion different ways you can take that discussion of going into the future and creating that world.
Sure.
But it starts internally, and we create holographically, we create non-locally, and that's the law of attraction. You know, we do it internally. And what we are on a personal level gets projected out around us unconsciously, you know?
Right.
And Jung said something like, you know, if you don't do the shadow work, if you let the shadow sort of go unresolved and control you, it will live your life for you, and you will call it fate. But what it is just your unconscious running the show. And that's what we've had. We've had this unconscious, this shadow running the world, and now we're just starting to wake up, and now we have an opportunity to actually do this and create intentionally, instead of abrogating and letting the authorities or whatever institution create for us. We have to do it at grassroots level, as individuals, grassroots level, community, and, you know, operate, you know, it's like they say, it's a cliche, think global but act local, and that really is how to do it. You know, as an individual human being, you can make massive changes, or very small but very significant changes in your personal sphere. You know, go and plant a garden out the back, go and get to know the next door neighbors. And this is how we, you know, a complex self-organizing system starts to shift and change and become more highly integrated. And that's what we're watching. We're watching human society as a complex self-organizing system going through a phase shift and finding a way to a new state of being. It's a state change. So it's going to be really interesting, and it's going to be very complicated and highly unpredictable and volatile, I think, for a few years.
That's what I was getting at, kind of a time frame on it, because I agree it is an individual process. And for me, with the work with hypnotherapy, it's the key question is, are you ready? Are you ready? So how many people are ready for what exactly you're talking about, that they realize that they are the omniverse? This is something that, as I look around for the brothering and sistering of the movement of what's happening, and being invitational to all people, there seems to be still this interesting progression of individuals that are involved in stepping forth, perhaps via the light, to be of assistance at this. Maybe it's 144,000. You know, I don't know what the exact number is, but there's something going on that I see it around me, but still the depth of what I feel may be needed in the short time frame for us to survive on this planet is really, I think, the key thing. You know, so anyway, I just wanted to know, looking at your perspective, you know, how do we mobilize the consciousness that you think may be necessary or may not be necessary to pull us out of a very short time frame of surviving, just in reference to climate change and all these other issues that are very real, that are happening to us at a very quick pace?
Forgive me, Robert. I actually lost my internet connection when you started talking there, so I only got the very end of your your question.
It's probably the best part, or you know, normally we lose the good part, you know. And the question was just kind of looking at what I see, we talked about hypnotherapy. Are people ready, you know, to experience something and mobilize that intention, that intention. So there's a lot of people out there and a lot of people in different spaces of consciousness. And it seems as though in order to enact first the consciousness within us and mobilize the operational response necessary to take care of really the crisis we're in as a planet with climate, takes some fancy footwork. And I love Stan Grof's, you know, looking at the Delphi oracles with administering LSD, you know, 2,000 people or 3,000 a year for 2,000 years. For 2,000 years, this was a process of bringing people into an awareness. And, you know, the governance said it was great. You know, I don't think that's going to be the angle we're going to take, but I just wanted to get your feeling. How can we invite people that are out in the fringes, which is a predominant number of people in the consciousness realm, into the fold to participate in the change that's needed?
It's a good question. I think what we're seeing is with the pandemic playing out right now, we have the authorities are doing things, particularly in Australia and New Zealand, and I know other places.
It's really wild there, yeah.
It's really out of control here, and it's starting to backfire on them, and it's doing something that the truth community and people like me haven't really been able to do over the years, which is actually get through to people that something is seriously wrong here.
Right.
And you can't trust these people. You cannot trust these institutions. They're corrupt. So now what they're doing with this tyranny that they've rolled out is it's so in people's faces, and it's such an imposition. It's really affecting people adversely that they're now starting to see that they are impacted, and they're going, oh, hang on a minute, what's going on here? And it's actually creating a level of curiosity, and it's shaking people out of complacency. And that's, I think, the real epidemic or pandemic that we've been in it for years, decades, centuries, is complacency and misplaced trust. And those things are completely toxic, and they tend to be pretty immovable because people don't like to move out of their comfort zone. We like what we know. We don't want to deal with the unknown. So leave it over there. I'm good here. Even if it's crap here, at least I know what it is, and we'll stay there. So now it's like here is becoming so uncomfortable for so many people that they're going, oh, well, what's over here? What are the other possibilities? What are the other options? And the system is actually starting to wake people up to start thinking, which is something that most people try to avoid because it takes effort. It's really, and like, I'm not being a smartass when I say that, it takes effort to think. And that's kind of the beginning of this sort of awakening, is going, what's that about? Whereas before, you never thought about it. You just glossed over it and got on with your day. And now that's not possible anymore. So we live in such an interesting and challenging testing sort of time. We're being given a choice here. Like, do you want to continue the way that you have continued on autopilot, not thinking anything through, not really living intentionally? Or are you going to start actually asking yourself, like, what do you really want? What are you willing to put up with? Like right now, our governments in Australia and New Zealand are inviting us to actually stop and consider what kind of like level of self-respect and self-worth do we have here as individuals and a country? Are we going to tolerate this neo sort of Nazi, neo-communist, Stalinist kind of regime? And this is part of the choice point. Like it's come through in this very unexpected form. I mean, I would love to have this sort of elegant spiritual awakening where we all just sort of gather around the campfire and sing Kumbaya. And I mean, it just...
That's one option. That's one option. I'm hoping for that as one option. But yeah.
Once we've woken up, we can choose to do that, and we can choose consciously. But what is the realization that's happening? I think is that it's starting to dawn on people that the choices they have made through their lives have mostly not been done consciously or intentionally, and that's how we've created the civilization that we have, and that's what's enabled the most corrupt among us to actually rule 8 billion people. And so they've set up a system which is designed to keep consciousness down. And now they're pushing the boot down on the face of humanity so hard that it's actually creating the reverse effect. It's backfiring on them. And now we're saying, oh, well, what's going on here? What is happening here? What's this about? And these are the most basic fundamental questions to ask. I mean, if you've been on this path, you've already been asking these questions for a long time. You know, I started asking these questions nearly 20 years ago, but
Sure.
A lot of people go their whole lives never considering, never asking, never having the curiosity. So the birth of curiosity, I think, is the beginning, is sort of like the birth pangs of the new, potentially a conscious civilization. And it's a very strange way to go about it, what we've done, but it is what it is. Like, this is the beginning of the awakening process en masse, I think.
So it's an organic process you're seeing, the unfolding through the kind of extreme element of domination through time, that it's reached a point where it's catalyzed people to ask those questions, and the natural sequence will unfold. And so I see and feel that. I'm just looking at timelines, which I guess we can throw out. We've got, you know, a unified potential timeline, which brings in all the disparate parts and reaches a level, some degree of equanimity amongst those parts, where the commonality, I believe, is going to be survival. You know, if we're going to agree on anything, let's figure out where our common is. You know, we're on a ball going through the universe. So, you know, once we start to understand that, you know, I believe we'll be able to move forward. I think at some level with what you're talking about, as far as naturally, organically developing the economic systems, developing the social systems, developing whatever type of monetary systems to roll over our society as we see it now, that is quite stretched out into a number of different realities. So yeah, I'm also have a food company, so I look at feeding people and, you know, what's happening with crops, what's available, what's not available within a very short period of time. So I'm always kind of concerned or looking at timelines in order to assess, I guess, how fast we're going to get there. And I guess we'll get there as fast as we get there will be the answer. And it's possible that we froze in Australia time. We're going to flash back on there. There we go. There we go.
Connectivity issues there, mate. Sorry about that.
Oh no, it's a matter of you know, it's what it is. You know, everything. I've had to kind of come to that conclusion later in my life, that acceptance is really so key.
Yeah.
And a sense of humor, humor.
Exactly.
So anyway, that was, you know, I guess the crux of the question was just looking at, you know, the mobilization of, again, so many souls that's happening in an organic process. And I guess we have to assume 21 of the last 23 civilizations perished. I don't know how many had intent, you know, and that's not even looking at Atlantis and Lemuria and Hyperborea and Polaria, wherever we want to go in historic senses. But there's been a lot of failures at this. And I mean, I'm optimistic that we can basically U-turn it or bring it up to the next level, and just trying to find out tools that people can use to evoke within themselves the understanding that that you speak of being an omni hominid at this point. So what tools are available to people that, if we go into in the United States, we've got a lot of different states called red states and blue states, and red states are relatively conservative and so forth. So to go into some place that really doesn't have a real good idea of what we're talking about, how do we get through to those people? Is there you know, something in your tool chest that allows that group of people to at least walk in the door and attempt to participate in opening their awareness?
No, that's an awesome question. I think, you know, people like us have been asking this question since the moment that we've had our awakenings. You know, how do we get through to people?
That's why I'm asking you. I figured you'd have a good idea.
I find that people are tremendously good at resisting new perspective until they want it. that's just that's the way it goes. I mean, you know, you look at most people and how we live, and we will not change something until it causes us so much pain that the pain of that thing being exacerbated is actually now worse than being in our familiar comfort zone. And that's something that, you know, when does that happen? I mean, how long is a piece of string? And so when we see things like, I mean, like I use the particular modality I use because it's effective with people who are already conscious.
That's a helpful starting point for the net results. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's what I was getting at. That's the point of, you know, if somebody's not quite there, you know, is there an invitational pathway? Because I believe it's deeply seated. Unless people come in karmically predisposed for this lifetime to only go so far. And that may be the case as well. You know, from a Vedic astrological perspective, human design, wherever we go and looking at how people's lives and realities are structured, you know, is the fluidity there in enough people to rise to the occasion of awareness if provoked at some level, or hopefully invited peacefully to participate. So that's the tool sets. And I know, again, we just kind of went over that. That's a question that's been asked. But how, you know, your experience with DNA, I think it's out there in the mindset, you know, with Bruce Lipton's work and others, knowing that conscious attention and so forth can shift things. Absolutely. So again, empowering people to that belief system, it's either no wine before it's time, or we have an opportunity to basically create programs or tool sets that can allow people to self-reflect and hopefully mobilize their awareness. But anyway, I'd like to know about your tool set for working with DNA.
Yeah, well, I use a particular method that's called the regenetics method, and that actually originated from a friend of mine called Sol Luckman, who's based in the States, and he developed it after a period of 10 years trying to recover his health after he lost it, having a very severe vaccine reaction. So he went on this healing path, this healing journey, trying to figure out, you know, he went and saw every doctor, every expert, every specialist. He went through every alternative practitioner. No one could really help him. He eventually got to working with a Qigong practitioner who showed him, you know, how to build your Qi. And he found that useful, but he realized that if he didn't practice it for a day or two, his energy levels would start to drop and he'd go back downhill again. So he realized that whatever it was doing, it was good, but it was only a relatively superficial sort of surface level solution.
Right.
And he needed something that would go down to the levels that he was injured at, which was his, you know, genetic level, and undo the damage. So long story short, he had kind of like basically a spontaneous download of this sort of information code or a vowel sequence that appeared in his sleep, in his dreams, and he woke up with it fully formed. And realized that this needed to be vocalized. It needed to be chanted in a kind of like a shamanic kind of a way.
Sure.
And so he incorporated the solfeggio, what we call the solfeggio tones, which probably isn't really historically accurate, but that's what we're popularly referring to them now. Sure. And so that's a set of frequencies that is employed with the regenetics method. So it's kind of a quasi-shamanic approach to metagenetically and epigenetically shifting someone's genetic expression. But this is not about, this modality is an evolutionary kind of modality. It's not about we're trying to fix your aches and pains, you know, we're trying to fix a broken bone or whatever's going on. It's not a reductionist kind of a thing. It's something that's holistic, and that's what Sol found out from his experience, was that he was essentially, by doing this process, kind of raised up to a state of evolution on a personal level that he wasn't at before the injury happened. Okay. So he realized that it's more than just a healing thing. It's a step beyond healing. And and I think actually, you know, there's different ways of looking at it, because we may actually be recapitulating and returning to or restoring ourselves to a state that humans once had occupied, possibly. And what it looks like as we do that, it may just look like we're evolving or accelerating our evolution.
Descending, yes.
So yeah, it's a very interesting thing, and it's something that it only makes any sense to people who are kind of already spiritually switched on and savvy and aware. And this is something that just helps tap into or activate the inner potentialities and bring out that inner you and the authenticity and the reality of who, and the expanded reality of who and what you are, so that you can manifest that multidimensionality and that omnidimensionality into your life here and now as a human being. So yeah, I mean, I found it quite an interesting thing to watch people go through the process over the last sort of 9 years, starting with myself.
How long does the process take?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about the ceremony, a ceremony would take approximately half an hour.
So that's the beginning and end. Do you work with people individually on any other, progressed type of timeline?
Yeah, recently I have opened myself up to actually work with people more hands-on. So that is something, people can reach out to me for if they feel like they want that sort of more hands-on kind of mentoring, closer guidance kind of thing.
Exactly. So what, in your second book, I know your first book, just glancing through it, reading the preface and the introduction, and then scanning all the people that you've, studied over the years. What does the second book, where does it go in reference to perhaps establishing the first book of who we are? Where does it go? If you feel free in discussing that element, because that seems to be, where we're going. And again, I'm big on how we're going to get there, at this point. So it's a matter of just kind of, again, feeling through your perspective on this transition, which we've articulated a little bit about being an organic process, and what tools can we offer people that are watching this right now that go, that's a lot of that sounds really intuitive to me, what they're discussing. Is there something you can offer people that that gives them, again, besides reading your book, which I think is a great first start, but any type of practices? I mean, is there a breathwork process and different things, or just to allow it to unfold naturally?
Well, I mean, one thing people can do is actually come involve yourself with me. That's the program that I'm running. So if they want to do that and get the activations, do the ceremonies, they can do that work with me. And if they want an additional mentoring hands-on stuff, then that's also an option. So, I mean, I can suggest that kind of thing. Outside of that, I mean, there's 1,000,000,001 different modalities and techniques that people are using. So,
of course. Yeah.
I feel like it's just where the individual's at and what they feel drawn to work with. I feel like a lot of my job in delineating what I've put together in those books is it's expanding perception and anchoring people back in the reality of who and what they are. But it's also in the process of doing that, it's curing a form of, if you like, delusional insanity that humans have been plagued with for a long time. We've had these delusional ideas about who we are and what we are not. And, the prevailing paradigm of materialism for the last couple 100 years or 300 years has been that we're just a bunch of meat sacks in this meaningless universe. And, when you're dead, you're dead. And that's kind of the narrative, and, the Big Bang and the universe is an accident. So it's kind of this tissue of false narratives and false assumptions and this collective insanity that we are unraveling now. And, that's where we will create a civilization that's kind of worthy of the name, is when we're not collectively insane and when we are back in our senses, understanding who and what we are.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of senses. Yeah.
The solution is awareness. The solution is just self-awareness. Humans who are self-aware will create amazing, beautiful things. They will create an amazing life situation on Earth for themselves, for each other. They will look after each other. We will have organic community as a natural function of humans becoming self-aware.
Yes.
That's really all we need to do. It's like the Buddha's approach was just basically help people break out of delusional insanity, come back into the reality of who you are, and
right.
Get out of that one about who you are really not, thinking that you're something that you're not, And he realized that you don't become enlightened, you just stop being insane. And that's the task. That's our task at a civilizational level. You know, as people wake up, we become less self-destructive, and we figure out through the complexity of the human mind and the collective mind, we figure out a million different ways of moving forward and making life easier and cleaning the planet up and all this stuff. But that happens very organically because we are in this social matrix that's organizing itself into these sort of more refined, sophisticated, hierarchical states of being, and it becomes more efficient and more effective. But if we don't wake up, it will become more efficient and effective at killing us. So that's why we need to do this work.
It's crossed my mind. It's crossed my mind. As far as looking at the expansion of awareness, I've been drawn lately to basically somehow corroborating our star culture status. I believe it's so important. We realize that, you know, the progression of anthropological growth that we've been sold hook and sinker basically shows us, you know, in a creationist mode or a Darwinistic mode, when we really have star culture intervention. We are of the stars. It's so important, I feel, to give us that breath right now, because we're kind of boxed into a reality that's unfolding. We're peeling back all the horrific things humans have done over the years to whatever cultures. It's page after page, it's being revealed. So we're really having to take that in. But I also believe we need to adorn ourselves with the reality that we are perhaps a Pleiadian mutation at some level. There is a missing link, and all of what I've seen in my studies over the years is absolutely there's a splice that occurred, whether it was 780,000 years ago, up through whatever. And, you know, the pyramids and the Sphinx are very, very old. You know, they're in the past 10,000 years. So anyway, all this stuff is out there. So I think it's really important. And there's some people working in this field to really bring that information up to an educational base so that, you know, we can start to expand that and internalize it. But that's just kind of an aside. But I believe this history of showing we are from the stars just kind of flips our whole orientation a little bit. That gives somebody that's, you know, bless their hearts, grown up, and I played baseball, but, you know, are stuck with sports as a reality or wherever their life is right now. It opens up a ha-ha moment, you know, if it can be done correctly. So that's what one of the tools that I'm kind of working with at the moment. But so looking at all you've, again, accomplished in your young life at this point, you know, what message can you offer people that are, let's say, are ready to make the changes, that provides them with a type of map maybe for how to go about it, as opposed to, you know, we talked about the organic sequencing. And I think that's probably the way it's going to unfold. But as far as just a message to folks to let them know it's going to be okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, firstly, there is nothing to fear. There is nothing to be afraid of. And anyone selling you this fear is they have an agenda. They're pushing an agenda. And if you tune that noise out and tap into your inner reality, your inner guidance system, you'll find that the map that you are looking for it's been with you the whole time. Your template and your journey and your map is encoded in you and your cells, down in your DNA and in your energy field. And that's all the guidance system that you need. But if you're tuned into, if you're externally referenced and listening to all the noise and distraction, it's very hard to hear that and to listen and to be guided by that. So right now, I mean, we've never had more distraction. We've never had more noise, and it's very interesting what's going on. And it's very easy to sit back and with the popcorn and just keep watching, going, wow, how about this? How, I can't believe that happened, you know, wow. But ultimately it's also a trap as well, because when you're in that state, you're passively receiving, you're not creating your reality for yourself. So it's sort of like check into it and then come back home, come back within and find out what your next step is, because it is there. It's actually in your soul. It's in that spark, spark of infinity that's in you, has your map and your journey and you only need to access yourself and pull on that thread. Just pull on that thread of yourself, and you'll find the answers that you're looking for moving forward in your life. And when good people live from their personal, authentic place, their reality internally, they make good things happen in the world. We don't need to be taught how to be good people. 97% of people are good. And if we stop listening to the insane psychopaths who are trying to manipulate us, we will create something incredible and beautiful, and something will last for ages. And we don't need to necessarily, we can relinquish the idea that we're going to have this sudden kind of like collective golden moment of, this is the way forward. We'll all just do this thing. It just doesn't really work like that. And that's fine. It's absolutely okay that we all kind of figure it out in this like roundabout way, journeying, it's not a straight line to the finish, and we cross paths and interweave and share information and perspectives. And then we'll go our different ways, and we'll share what we've learned with the next person. And there's this ripple effect that keeps happening. So come back home, and it starts from there. Create from the inside out.
Yes. Thank you, Brendan. Again, it's an honor to speak with you, and I am so hopeful your message reaches as many people as possible, and I will certainly offer as much as I can to hopefully promulgate as much as possible what you're saying and doing. So we're on the journey. We're on the journey, and I'm hopeful the time frames are kind to us. And the way of looking at this, for me, has been timelines. Are we going to have a unified timeline moving forward? Or are we going to have divergent timelines of one culture going this way and one culture going that way? So there's a lot before us, but I think keeping the heart and the spirit open is absolutely clear, and certainly walking our talk as much as possible. So again, I want to thank Brendan D. Murphy for joining us today on Frontier Theater. And we will have all of Brendan's information on the website. And I certainly hope you pick up his book, and certainly his new book, and jump on his site. Of the individuals I've come across in my journey, Brendan is very rare in his ability to grok a timeline of the past that really supports a positive future. So thank you so much, and thank you, Brendan, very much.
Thank you, Robert. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, an honor to be here and have this conversation with you, man. I'll do it again anytime.
Cool, very much. We'll be in touch.
Cool. All right, take care.
Bye-bye.